Welcome to the Be Here Now Guest Podcast. This series features a collection of teachings and conversations centered around mindfulness, spiritual growth, and living a life in balance. Each week, our diverse network of guest teachers and hosts offer up wisdom and practices from a different spiritual path and perspective. If you would like to support this podcast, please visit BeHereNowNetwork.com/donate.
This morning, we're going to sit together and I'm going to lead a very guided meditation on working with thought and thinking that the brain secretes, the way the mouth secretes saliva, thinking. And how do we work with it in meditation? So let's sit together. Settling into your breathing. And however you do that, I like to take those 3 deep intentional breaths. Breathing in the aliveness of this moment. And releasing any tension in the body. Breathing in the energy of the trees, the sky, this gorgeous mountain. And relaxing as we breathe out. So just want to offer a little Dharma play to begin with. We're just for maybe 3 or 4 minutes. See if you can count each thought as it arises. And your thoughts may come as pictures or words or both together. And the idea is you're just letting your mind relax and you're waiting carefully to count each thought. The image that's often used about watching thoughts is like a cat watching a mouse hole. After counting one thought, noticing it, just wait patiently for the next one. Thoughts are very tricky. Some of them are just little soft whispers like, oh, it's quiet in here. If you find you're in a whole story, just count it as one thought. You lose track, just start counting again. You've got 1 more minute. Okay, so this Dharma play hopefully will give you a sense of how you can actually observe the thought process with mindfulness, with awareness, that you can watch a thought, that you can let it arise and have its being and tell its story and pass away. And this is the most liberating realization of mindfulness practice, that you are not your thoughts, that you are the loving awareness that can observe your own mind stream, the stream of thinking, of inner thought, of story, of movies and pictures, that you can be aware of all of it without identifying with it, making it a story about who you are, without getting caught up in reactivity to it. And you get to know what kind of thoughts predominate in your mind, what they're like. What are your top 10 themes? So what we're doing is we become aware of thinking, and we're not making thoughts good or bad here. A thought can be sublime and spiritual and completely inspiring, or it can be just awful and hateful and kind of repulsive. But from the perspective of meditation practice, it actually doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if your thoughts are like a cesspool or, a luminous heaven. I mean, it matters to us personally very much. But from the meditation perspective, what matters, the only thing that matters, is your awareness of it. Because we're looking at the process of thinking, how a thought appears, how it passes away, how thinking happens in the mind. We're noticing, do you hear thoughts? Do you talk to yourself? Is it like a silent movie or a talking movie? Is it a picture? I notice if I'm lonesome, I talk to my friends in my head. Or I argue with somebody. Just noticing, maybe you see words like you're reading a book. We're not really attending to the content of thinking here, whether it's good or bad. It's bringing attention to how the thinking happens. Observing thoughts. When we do this, when we observe the process of thinking, it actually changes. it changes how they appear, how they disappear, which ones persist and really hang around, even when they've completely outstayed their welcome. And you begin to observe this, the way that thoughts associate with one another. Like if you have a thought about a place that maybe you visited, and then you think of the friend who took you there or told you about it. And then you think about your relationship with that friend, and maybe you see that friend. And maybe you go on and on and on. And that's called papancha, the branching, proliferating chain of associations. And again, it's normal. It's not a mistake. We're just becoming aware of it in a new way in meditation. And thoughts are generated often, they're generated by feelings, emotions. We have a strong sensation, a strong emotion, and then thinking about it happens. Or sometimes a thought comes that generates a strong emotion. Like I have certain thoughts I call swoopers because they swoop in, and it's usually something I forgot or didn't do, and they make me anxious. And so when a swooper thought comes in, I feel like anxious in my belly. And so you notice this connection between the mind and the body, the thoughts and the emotions. Thoughts are such a powerful force in our lives when they're outside of our awareness. When we're not aware of them, they actually drive a lot of our behavior. They even rule our lives. They can send us just spinning into reactivity, emotional responses, being down on ourselves. One great Tibetan meditation teacher said, you have to choose. I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember the actual quote. You have to choose. You get to choose between the discomfort of becoming aware of your thoughts or the discomfort of having them be in charge of you. But when you can observing thoughts for what they actually are. What is a thought? it's actually a very fleeting thing. An image in the mind, a sound image, some words, practically nothing at all. Very light. Almost transparent. The thoughts begin to lose their power. And we start having some control, some choice about how to use our thinking, how to think clearly and creatively, rather than having our habitual thought, the top 10 tunes, and our habitual responses to them run our lives. In meditation, the thoughts, they often come as simply a drifting away from experience, from what's happening here and now. We usually find we're already thinking something we didn't notice when we stopped paying attention to the breath, to the body, to the subject of meditation. And it can help to drop in just a light mental note when you recognize that thinking is happening. You can note drifting, wandering, or simply thinking. And this is the activity of mindfulness, clearly recognizing the mind is thinking and naming it. And it can be helpful to note what kind of thought is happening, like planning, daydreaming, remembering, arguing, judging, fantasizing. So when you find yourself lost in a memory of something that came before this moment, you can gently drop in the note, remembering. And when you notice that maybe you're planning what you're going to do after this moment, later, maybe what you're going to have for lunch, when thoughts are, when they're strong or compelling, it can be very helpful to drop in that note, planning, planning. And some thoughts bring such powerful feelings with them that they really grab the mind. And then we can use mindfulness to see what's happening in the body right now. What's happening in the mind while this thinking is happening? And what we don't do in meditation is investigate the contents of the mind, like, why am I having this thought? And why do I keep telling myself this story, etc.? We just turn our attention to the present moment experience. The images or sounds that make up the thought, and the body sensations and emotions that are connected to that thought or that train of thinking. And you can notice when difficult or strong thoughts arise, there's often an energetic expression of them in the body. And coming home to our senses, centering in the body, can be a really helpful way to disengage from a compelling story. And when thoughts are strong, you might experience even some kind of buzzing in the head, a contraction in the belly, tension around the eyes or the forehead. So then we just attend to the physical sensations, understanding that when we bring this kind and curious kind of attention to them, they change. And you have insights. This is called insight meditation for a reason. You start to have insights of the link between the mind and the body. And you have insight into how we get caught in the content of our thoughts. The first great insight is to see just the torrents of thinking that happen in the mind, like a waterfall. We're never even aware of it in our everyday life, usually going about our business. This is a great insight. You know, our emotions generate so many thoughts. So also just noticing, is there sadness? Is there anger? Is there fear or even happiness that's fueling thoughts? And when you discover an emotion, you understand if it's an emotion that keeps coming up, it wants your attention. It wants attention. And thoughts are one way that an emotion can grab our attention. So bringing full attention to the emotion, feeling it fully, will often stop the stream of thinking that it's generating. And practicing with the emotion, by now you know, ground your attention in the bodily sensations that accompany that emotion. And sometimes things can be so deeply disturbing that bringing mindfulness to the thinking and the emotions can feel unsafe, threatening, even dangerous. And then, or sometimes it's just such a deep, sort of deep rut, a deep pattern that our mindfulness isn't strong enough to meet it. And in those cases, the Buddha talked about five ways, five tools that we can use when we're in a tough spot with our minds, with distracting thoughts. And I'll just name them briefly. One is to replace the thought. If it's fear or anger, you could just replace it with another thought of loving kindness. May I be free from fear. May I be free from this suffering. Or you can say, I will note every time this thought, this feeling arises. You can use Vedana, just noting unpleasant, disliking, or with a pleasurable fantasy, pleasant, liking. Sometimes I treat pesky thoughts uh, like a child needing attention. If you put a hand on the shoulder of that thought and say, not now, later. And sometimes the mind is trying to protect us by generating a big cloud of thinking to cover up a difficult or painful. We talked about this and talking about the hindrances. And sometimes the mind is trying to make me happy. It produces pleasant thoughts to make itself happy, but there's still thinking. Maybe shift to the metta or loving kindness, which is intentionally thinking certain thoughts, saying certain phrases to help the mind be still and happy. We have a tendency to believe our thoughts, to believe that they might be saying something important for us. But there's a difference, again, between the thoughts that create suffering. Really, so much of our suffering is created by our thinking and not by the thing out there that we think is making us suffer. It's created by our emotional reactivity. And it's really important that if a strange, weird thought appears, not to think I'm a strange, weird person for having this thought. Or if, a really cool thought appears, not to think I must be really creative to have such a thought. Our work in meditation isn't to still the mind, although certainly that can happen, but to make our thoughts conscious, to bring these thoughts into awareness, to see that they are not me or mine, that I have a choice in how I identify, believe, and react to them. At the deepest level, there's awareness, mindfulness of how we construct our self identity, the way we view ourselves, how we think and feel about ourselves. This too really frees the heart. we can see through the seeming solidity, the seeming reality of how we conceive of ourselves, of this self. And seeing through this, letting the self be a little more transparent, a little more malleable, appearing, having its being when we need to be somebody. And then willing to let go and open our hearts to just being instead of being someone. And just as we perceive the fleeting nature of thinking when we're really present with it, the fleeting nature of these oh so compelling emotions when we're really present with them, we understand that we don't want to miss this life, that we want to savor this existence. We can't ever get back the moments that are gone, the days that are gone. And one of the ways that we can not lose ourselves and appreciate each moment is to bring our full attention, full mindfulness, full heartfulness, really embracing each moment. Our life here in retreat, just like our everyday life, presents us with so many chances to practice receiving and accepting this thought, this sensation, this sound, this smell, this taste, this touch, this moment, this breath, this day. And then we see moments that become like a kind of magic, the miracle of this body harmoniously functioning, the breath breathing us, the liver running all by itself, all those enzymes, knows just when to release them, and so on for every organ in the body. The sun shining on the pine needles, that gray squirrel with such a big bushy tail, when we're not thinking about somewhere else, someplace else, someone else, we appreciate these moments with gratitude for what is actually a sacred moment, a sacred moment, moments of everyday magic. So I don't want to make, it's just it's a subtle thing not to make thinking into the enemy, because obviously we have clear thinking that's creative and important, and analytical thinking that helps us solve problems. And the kind of thinking that we're addressing here is that discursive, habitual. I think of it as, constant comment, like that tea. It just follows us. It's like trails in the wake of every experience, liking it, disliking it. What, instead of just being with it. So that's the kind of thinking that we're that we are being aware of. And in the awareness of it, we make room for the perception of the whole, everything that's around us. The thinking can be there. It can go on. It can just comment and chatter, and it often does. I mean, you can breathe and think, right? You can even be present with your breath, and there's thinking going on. It's okay. The main thing is to know it, because just usually we don't. And not to believe it all, because that's where the suffering comes in. And Gula just offered it, like, just such a thoughtful, taking, accountable, responsible apology for a misstep. But life isn't always going to apologize to us, unfortunately, and not very often thoughtfully and kindly either. So to begin to see, we can't control that out there. We can control what we do with it in here. And that's actually freeing our hearts. It's hugely liberating.